Last time I met Bernard, I discovered that he had regrets around not buying property before the market had moved. I briefed his money master from Orbis Investments, Edward Blaine, and his financial advisor, Rod, who's going to put a plan together to help Bernard achieve his goals.
One of the things, and it's not just with Bernard, but with many people, is there's a little bit of FOMO, a bit of fear of missing out. And I think Bernard's biggest issue is what is he missing out on and what should he be doing that he's not doing at the moment. I don't think that he has any particular shortcomings in terms of spending too much. He has a relatively modest lifestyle, but he is 28 and he is single and he lives in the eastern suburbs, so he probably has a bit of fun, and who's going to begrudge him for that given what he does for a living.
I'm back at Bernard's house and I have Bernard's new financial advisor, Rod Dickinson, with me. Bernard has spent time with Rod, taking him through his financial situation and is about to get the news on what it will take to implement his financial plan. Well, you guys have obviously done some work. You've talked on the phone and you've done your fact find and you've kind of got a strategy. Talk to us about what you're thinking is going to happen, Rod.
Bernard, I'm really impressed with the discipline you've put in place so far. You've got a really strong savings capability and you've used that really well. One of the things that you've mentioned, though, is you may have something missing there, maybe around the property side of things.
Yeah, I've been pretty proactive, I suppose, in my savings and equity side of it. But, to try and diversify my portfolio or be well-rounded, I suppose, property is something that always feels like you've sort of missed the boat or something I've always wanted to get into. So, exploring the property side of things is definitely something I'm keen to do.
Yeah, look, we're really keen to explore a strategy there where we can actually get you into a property. It may not be the end property that your family home, but at least to get you that exposure and do it in a way that's really tax effective.
Rod will be looking at a strategy for Bernard to enter the property market without compromising his income so he can continue his savings and investment alongside. Professional rugby is pretty lucrative, but I get if you get injured, it's all over then. You'd no longer get paid. You've got to make hay while sun shines.
Yeah, I think, I've been very fortunate to play rugby as a career. Never did I think I would, or never to think I'd be able to earn a living off it. Like you said, there is that insecurity there. You're not sure when your last match is going to be, when your last contract, and when you've got to join the real world. So it's trying to make hay while the sun shines, I suppose, and put myself in a really positive position with the fortune I've already had about playing rugby as a career.
Rod did tell me that, you have quite a large share portfolio, so every month you get paid, you've been pumping money into shares, which is super smart. But you've got a lot of Australian equities. So Rod was talking about maybe diversifying a bit and doing a bit more exposure to global companies, not just Australian businesses. Bernard clearly knows about buying shares and has a good portfolio of Australian equities. But he's now looking at adding even more to his portfolio of international shares.
He's really looking to be able to pick the right career post-rugby, and I think that's really important. With the work that he's done so far, there will be that flexibility where he doesn't have to necessarily go straight into a gig that he doesn't really like. So I think there will be some choice and some capability there to have an income stream that's growing now, but will provide him some flexibility to really make that post-career thing, and that's really important to you, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, and I think for me, I'm not really assured what I'm actually going to do post-rugby. With having the economics background or going into business, but for me, I haven't sort of been a part of the real world yet. So knowing actually what I want to do or where I'll even be is probably the unknown. So to have that, I suppose, that cushioning of setting up my financials and doing my investing properly now when I'm earning well can allow me that luxury, I suppose, when it all comes to an end.
Bernard's short-term goal is to get into the property market. He also wants the time and income to reinvent his career after rugby.
I'm really excited about putting a plan together for Bernard. He's shown some really good discipline in the past and he's got the building blocks there, and really we're just trying to fill the gaps.
It's now time to accelerate Bernard's learning, so I'm giving him a masterclass from a real money master. I've brought in Edward Blaine from Orbis Investments all the way from London to change Bernard's view on property and the way he thinks about long-term investing. Edward is a member of the Europe investment team and is one of the elite stock pickers for their global equity fund.
The number one piece of financial advice to anybody, anywhere, anytime is each year to spend less than you earn. It can be tough, and it gets tougher and tougher the less you have. And then there's that question of what you do with the bit left over that you save. And if you compound and build your return, even in line with the broad stock market over those decades, it's really amazing that what the magic of compound interest can do. If you invest $1 today at a 10% return and hang around for 50 years, you'll have more than $100 from that $1, having done nothing at all. So you've told me Bernard's very concerned that he's missed the boat on the property ladder. It's a very particular local attitude. If Bernard was playing in the England team and he was based in London, he'd be saying the opposite. Thank God I didn't buy a house 3 years ago because my house is now worth 10 or 15% less than it was when I bought it. And that's a reminder to all of us that the property cycle is called the property cycle for a reason. It's a cycle. It goes up and then eventually it goes down. So one of the keys to investing is to find ways to make it as relaxing for you as possible. People always feel attracted to what's local, and there's an expression in finance of home bias, which is people's natural tendency to buy shares on the local stock market far more than in the world as a whole. It's a thing in Australia, but it's a thing everywhere. If you can fight it, it's always worth fighting it, because the world is a big place, and although you do get global recessions, they tend to be less strong than the extreme recessions you can get in any one country. If you can avoid it and you can accept that actually part of the point of investing is spreading your bets, because it will help you through the tough times, then it's worth pushing in that direction.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear what Ed said. The ability to diversify, to mitigate risks is something that's very beneficial, and also to look into alternate markets, look around the world rather than in that home bias that he was speaking about.
Today, Bernard Foley's financial plan is in the spotlight, and an important part of his plan is the investment choices he makes. So what's he doing? What lessons can you learn from him? Debbie Blakey, the CEO of Hester, is joining me today, and Jenny Josling, who's the Managing Director of Orbis Investments. Well, Debbie, Bernard's got FOMO around property. What is it about Aussies that feel like a property is their investment strategy?
I think it's so understandable that people go to the idea of property because it's tangible. You can see it, you can touch it, you can take a photo of it. But it is, it's important to think through the attributes of property and think deeper than just being able to touch it and see it. And, the fact that it's a liquid, you can't sell it as easily as you can some other asset classes. And of course, the fact that it's lumpy. You either own it or you don't own it. You can't sell it a brick at a time if you need access to capital.
That's true. And look, in the masterclass that Ed gave, and Ed's one of your key stock pickers at Orbis Investments, he said that around the rest of the world, they don't think like that. No one's really wanting property, particularly in parts of Europe.
Yeah, he makes a great comment. He says if you were on the England rugby team 3 years ago, you wouldn't be saying that now because England's had a fall in the property market. So England's been through a few cycles. And a lot of Australians haven't seen those cycles. So that was a great lesson for Bernard to take away. And you can see that sort of dawning on him as you go through the series. He does have FOMO, and we all have this emotional connection to property. And he also, I think what he's realising is, through Ed's lesson actually, that look, it can be cyclical. When you've got FOMO and you feel like you should rush to the investment, it's not necessarily the best time to do it. It's often because other people have done really well and you think you should be in there. So he's sort of learning, actually, I should stand back. Maybe this isn't the right time to rush into it. I can take my time and, discuss whether it is the right thing to do. So there's some great lessons that he was taking away there.
Yeah, look, he did. And I mean, with the property market the way it is at the moment, he's probably thinking, phew, I haven't missed out.
He's feeling very wise.
Yeah.
And actually, that was his lesson. His lesson was, don't rush in, take my time. It's a valid investment choice to make once you've been through the right reasons for doing it. But take your time and don't rush in. And, I think as Australians, we are learning property can come down. It doesn't go up all the time.
Yeah, well, that's right. And look, a lot of it's psychology, isn't it? Because, Bernard's used to the psychology of being a sports star and the psychology of rugby. Then to get that mindset, the psychology of investing, I mean, you're doing that every day of the week, Debbie. You run a multi-billion-dollar business around investing. Talk to me about how people can start to change their psychology when it comes to money.
Well, I think sport and investing actually have so much in common. And it probably really starts with the mind, how you think about money, how you think about investing. And, on a sporting front, people say games are won and lost. In the mind. It's very much a mental activity, and the same with investing. And there's a lovely Warren Buffett quote that if you can't manage your mind, you won't be able to manage money. And so I think that's where it starts. But of course, then there's the coach, having a mentor, having somebody help you, seeking advice. Those are things that people do in the sporting world, and exactly the same applies in investing. And of course, then practicing, doing it, actually doing it, and practicing and learning, which is what investing is about, getting that in education and actually doing it.
Yeah, look, I think you're right. And Rod proved to have a lot of value for Bernard, didn't he? Because, I mean, Bernard's a pretty savvy guy, but Rod sort of sat there and went, let's look at the whole plan. Short, long, how can you get what you want, but make smart decisions. Jenny, you're going to tell me that psychology is a huge part of the way Orbis invests, because you guys actually do the opposite of what everyone else is doing, right?
Yeah, so the FOMO thing works for us because we know that, you know, when everything's going up is not necessarily the best time to buy it. So we look for opportunities where emotion has come into the picture and the psychology is impacting, you know, the price of a company, and it's got cheap. Everyone's running to the door, but actually that can be a great time to buy, and it's property's a similar example, you know. The time to buy it's not when it's going up, up, up. The time to buy it's actually when it's coming down. So, but I think with Bernard, actually, the sporting analogy to me was his discipline.
Yeah, look, he's a very
impressive.
disciplined character.
And
He's like going running when I'm there, and I'm like eating a donut, and I'm like, oh, bye, Bernard.
The discipline he's put into his saving, you can see that's what's made him a successful athlete. And he's put that, I was really impressed that, you know, he's been saving, you know, rigorously since he started. He knows that he's got a different time horizon in that particular career to everyone else, and that's really paid off for him. So he had some great foundations to come into these lessons, but then you could see there was also some great takeaways that he got from Ed's class about, you know, the property lesson, and also just about diversifying. He's heavily into one type of investment, and so there is risk attached to that.
And look, he was in a lot of Australian equities, so he had a share portfolio, but a lot of Aussie. I mean, when you're at Hester, you diversify portfolios all the time. You're investing in a range of asset classes. Most Australians don't think like that. How can the average Australian learn more about diversifying when they really don't understand what that means?
It's really about having all your eggs in one basket. And I think people understand that. And also, you know, if you think of us living in Australia, we probably own our own home at some point in Australia. We work in Australia, derive our income in Australia. So we're very exposed to the Australian economy, and to then have all our investments in Australia, we're compounding that and really have a lot of risk in Australia. So there's an enormous case to say, well, if I'm going to live here and derive my income here, I should really look to diversify my investment portfolio globally. And Australia makes up such a small part of the global stock exchange. It's only 3% of the global stock market. So it's really important to think about that whole global opportunity in terms of investing.
It's true, isn't it? I mean, this home bias of we're here, we see Woolworths, you invest in Woolworths, you can go to that supermarket. But Jenny, you've got some good examples, don't you, of people live in a global economy, they just don't think I should be investing there.
Look, I actually understand the psychology, the comfort of home bias, because people, you know, when people got Telstra shares, everyone became an investor in Australia. So, and people have that comfort of, as you say, they go to Woolworths, they know that they contributed that for profits, so they get it. But if you think about it, you wake up, you know, your alarm goes off and you hit your Apple phone or your Samsung. Some of us put our Nikes on and go for a run, maybe not Vanessa. But
I reach for my foreign-owned donut company.
You know, we floss our teeth with our Johnson & Johnson floss. We go to work, we sit on our Microsoft computer, you know, we might have a book that we've bought on Amazon. So every day, every hour, you know, sometimes almost every second, you know, we're interacting with these products that are global products, big global companies, and we've contributed to their profits. So it's sensible to want to be a part of that. I mean, the global stock market's, you know, in Australian dollar terms, about $100 trillion. And as Debbie says, the Australian market itself is a slither of that, you know, less than 3%. So I think, yeah, just to diversify that risk, get your eggs spread then. You know, you do need to think about the global economy. But look, the Australian stock market's done well. Over 30 years, it's actually outperformed the global market. But it's risky to have everything in one particular sector.
And you also need to look more broadly than just shares.
Sure.
I mean, that's one of the benefits of super is, you know, super, you can think of super as a vehicle that gives you access to so many different asset classes. You know, you might own a portion of airports and ports and
Yep.
gas pipelines, you know,
And
as
some
well as
property
the shares.
exposure as well.
And
so,
property,
yeah,
of
yeah,
course.
yeah,
And different types of property,
Yeah.
not just residential.
Exactly, yeah, commercial.
So that's really what diversification gives you.
Well, look, I mean, Bernard's got his strategy pretty much nailed. I think he's someone who's going to be successful, and at 28, I mean, that's a huge advantage to have the benefit of the process he's going through now.